I'm here to talk to you about Bishop Richard Williamson's latest Eleison comments, number 333. I've commented on something of Bishop Williamson's from a few years back, but this time he's got something right, and I think we should acknowledge when people have something right. And I will probably come in with some other vlogs because I do keep track of the various traditionalists, priests, bishops, and even lay writers to some extent because I'm trying to get an idea, what are people thinking? What is their thought process? And so I'm going to take a few quotes and comment on them here. Bishop Williamson notices something that I myself have also noticed for years. And I quote, basically, original sin. Once the original fight for tradition in the 1970s and 80s had succeeded in guaranteeing the survival of the essentials of the faith, traditionalists sat back on their laurels to enjoy their cozy enclaves, and they settled into a comfortable routine which they are now reluctant to lose. They have lost the spirit of fighting for the faith. He's got it dead on right. I noticed it years back. I noticed it when it was happening at the time. In fact, if I had, been a little bit better at putting words together back then, I might have written something maybe similar to what Bishop Richard Williamson just issued November 30 of 2013. And so I'm going to give a slight history myself. My family entered this fight when I entered the second grade in 1966. All right? I won't go into details. That's for some other commentary. We quit the Novus Ordo in November of 72. I had already felt a call for the priesthood a couple years before, but where would I go? I had no answers, and Father James Dunphy, who was coming through at the time when we quit Novus Ordo, said, there are no answers. The only thing he did say was when Mom told him we quit the Novus Ordo, he says, you have peace of mind now, don't you? I disagree with him on the other thing, that there are no answers. There are answers. There have to be. God is truth, and God's not going to leave us out here floundering around. But let us get back to the point here. So Bishop Williamson said the original fight for traditions in the 70s and 80s had succeeded in guaranteeing the survival of the essentials of the faith. Well, I don't quite agree with that. But let's go into what was it like in the late 70s, early 80s. Up until about the mid-1980s, things were kind of still stirring around. Then the smoke settled, finally. And so did everyone else. They got into their comfort zone. They could sit back and relax. They had their comfort zone. They had their Sunday Mass or whatever they had set up. Some stayed with the Society of St. Pius X. Others went with the independent priests, which led to eventually they took bishops, because they had to have a future with what Bishop Daniel Dolan and even the Society calls sacramental bishops, which produce a continuing stream of sacramental priests. In other words, you've got to perpetuate your comfort zone. I mean, if you're a couch potato like to sit down and watch football on Sunday afternoons and drink beer, you've got to replenish the beer in the refrigerator. Okay, the same principle is working here. Another group about that same time adopted the home alone position. In other words, they just stayed home. The first two groups began building their own churches, while the third group just simply stayed at home. They said their rosary and waited for the final trumpet to blow, and they are still waiting. And then there was a small fourth group which people don't hear much about, which was born in the early 1970s, which wanted to bring about an end to the crisis by electing a pope. Okay? Now, after this settling down I would say, in my area, I'm thinking it settled down around 84. Okay? I would say it would be the same throughout the world. So Bishop Richard Williamson has hit the right time frame. There are some changes, though. Traditionalism has now broadened out. The Society of St. Pius X is in their own little box. Lefebvre ensured a continuing line of sacramental bishops and priests by consecrating Williamson and 3 others in 88. Okay, the sedevacantist position has grown into 2 basic groups, which gained acceptability in the late 1980s and early 1990s. When Bishop Schuchert ran the CMRI, only a few people were with him, and the rest would not touch it with a 10-foot pole, as it descended from the old Catholics. I mean, you can go on the internet and see Father Cicada downing the old Catholics. And there's a book out there, Bishops at Large, I think is the one. There are 2 of them, Bishops Regular and Bishops at Large. I don't have the right one. Whatever. The CMRI and Schuchert are considered not Catholics because they were old Catholics. We are traditionalist Catholics. We're descended from Tuc and Lefebvre. And now Menez comes in. But okay. The CMRI gained acceptability by 3 things. The expulsion of Schuchert, the entrance into Bishop Musey's Western Diocese of the United States, with the conditional reordination of all the priests, and then eventual future ordinations in the self-same diocese, and finally by the consecration of Mark Pivarunas as a bishop by Bishop Moises Carmona of the Tuc line. Now they're considered mainstream traditionalists. Bishop Pivarunas, in turn, brought the Society of St. Pius V and their splinter groups into the mainstream by consecrating Bishop Daniel Dolan. Now, true, Kelly and Dolan had already split by that time, but they gained their acceptability by that action. Okay, this was confirmed 9 years later by Bishop McKenna consecrating Father Daniel Sonborn as a bishop as well. Basically, before Pivarunas' consecration of Dolan, everyone considered the Society of St. Pius V simply a break off from the Society of St. Pius X, and they put them all in that box over there. If you want the Society of St. Pius X, if you don't want quite that, then go over to the Society of St. Pius V. The rest of them, they wanted the Tuc line, and they were kind of separated. Now these are all kind of an acceptable box. And now a third group is starting to gain some respectability, the same one that was disrespectable 45 years ago, and that is the old Catholics and the bishops and priests, also from the Duarte Costa line, Bishop Duarte Costa. Basically, there is no real difference between the old Catholics, the descendants of Bishop Duarte Costa, the Society of St. Pius X, Society of St. Pius V, CMRI, Tuc line, sedevacantist. Okay. At the bottom line, they're all the same. But I don't want to get off on that any further than I already have. I'm too far already. Let's return to Bishop Williamson. He points out a serious difficulty. Some colleagues can also let themselves be run off their feet by their priestly tasks, leaving themselves no time or inclination to read or study, turning into mere administrators and communicators. They weaken their convictions and preaching. In these times, Jesus told us to read and study. We read it in the last Sunday after Pentecost Gospel, let he who reads understand. Okay? This applies especially, but not only, to priests and bishops. You, lay people, have got to read and study just as much as the rest of us, because if it be possible, even the elect will be deceived, and that has happened. I personally saw this same thing when I come to traditionalist priests in the early 1980s. I'm trying to sort things out. I'd left the Society of St. Pius X. I'm trying to figure out, how can I become a priest? Where should I go? What should I do? So I'm bringing in questions. They couldn't even be bothered to help me look up and find the answers to these heaven and hell questions. These are not small things. It's not like how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. This is my eternity we're talking about here. Bishop Williamson points out why these priests do not look into these matters. And I'll quote, "Fear of the unknown, when the whole world around you is going mad, and you find an enclave of sanity, and then that enclave also begins to go mad. It requires unusual strength of character to face up to the reality and not prefer some illusion or other, and of illusions there are plenty. Thus many priests realize that they are living through a drama calling for some crucifying decisions, but they lack the necessary fortitude to launch into the unknown. He hit it dead on. I'm going to discuss this in more detail in a separate video because this is already getting long. I'm going to continue on with this. Unfortunately, Williamson is in the same boat. I happened to meet a man a few months ago who knows Bishop Williamson personally. This man is a sedevacantist, and he's trying to talk Bishop Williamson into sedevacante. And we were discussing the matter, and he said, Bishop Williamson says sedevacantism is a dead-end street. And I said, no, it isn't. It's quite simple. You go elect a pope. Traditionalism is the dead-end street, Williamson. And all of you out there, it's going nowhere. 100 years from now, traditionalism will be gone. I believe the conciliar church will be gone. And this not wishing to launch out into the unknown has led some people clear back into the Vatican II Church, which many of us left in the 70s, in the form of the indult masses. The chapel, which was founded in Oklahoma City, which I went to, was for a time in the indult. Recently, they've now left the indult and gone over to the Society of St. Pius X, which they dumped in 77. This is crazy. Okay. All of the traditionalist groups, whether they be the Society of St. Pius X, the Sedevacantists, the old Catholics of Duarte Castelline, have one thing in common. They do not truly wish to settle the matter of the Pope. For most, the matter of the Pope is important, but not important enough to take a solid stand and carry through on it. Okay? Now, I'm going to disagree with Bishop Williamson on one serious point here. He says, once the original fight for tradition in the 1970s and 80s had succeeded in guaranteeing the survival of the essentials of the faith, the battle in the 70s and 80s missed one very important point: the doctrine of the papacy and its practical application to the crisis of Vatican II and its aftermath. This led to a distortion of several other doctrines of the divine and Catholic faith, which we plan on addressing after the first of the year, in videos, in writing, and even by publishing a book on the subject, which I'll be working on later this day, in fact. Watch for more announcements on this as the project moves forward. We have found a catechism from the late 1800s that lays out the main points of the doctrine of the Church. What is the Catholic Church? Which we will enhance by bringing in more recent pronouncements from the Catholic Church prior to Vatican II, the popes, the 1917 Code of Canon Law, things that will flesh out these subjects. But basically, this catechism pretty much would stand on its own on the subject. I do plan on, after going through this, presenting the basics from this catechism, then I'm going to put in an application and draw the points forward, practical application of these points to our own times. My friends, we should not fear the unknown. The saints did not. Did the unknown deter the martyrs from giving their lives for Almighty God? All God is asking from us today is to take a position which the world considers unacceptable, to be fools for Christ, as St. Paul says. And I will discuss fear of the unknown in a video a little bit later. God bless you all, and God bless Bishop Williamson. Pass along my thoughts to him. I'd like to talk to him.